Well, this is Mother's Day weekend, and I want to give a special shout out to all the mothers. And as I was preparing for this speech, I was reminded of a trip I took many, many years ago. This was to the San Diego Zoo. Has anyone here ever been to the San Diego Zoo, Southern California? Well, has anyone here ever been to any zoo, either in Tulsa or Denver or somewhere? Oh, you have it at home, Gail. Diane, you've been to the zoo also? Okay. Well, this particular trip, one of my favorite exhibits has always been the sea otters. And we were at the San Diego Zoo and we're watching the sea otters play, and there's the little mama sea otter and the little baby sea otter. And the next thing I know, they started talking. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. I didn't know they could talk. And so I was listening to them, and then all of a sudden I heard the baby sea otter say something to his mom. And do you know what the baby sea otter said to his mom on that day? He said, "Mom, there's no otter like you." So just a little warm up there, a little icebreaker to get you all going there. But in all seriousness and all honesty, I wanted to give a special shout out and a special thank you to all the moms that are here today in church, that are at home listening, and to anyone around the world that may be watching this on YouTube later. A very special shout out and thank you to the moms. And I also wanted to take a moment to dedicate today's talk to my own mom. It was 1 year ago this coming Wednesday that my mom made her own transition when she left her physical form on this earthly planet. And if not for my mom, I certainly would not be the person I am today, and I would not be standing here in front of you today. And I know for certain that I wouldn't be speaking because I wouldn't know how to read and write. And I'll get into that story in just a moment, but a very special thank you and shout out to my mom. And I wanted to dedicate this speech to my mom today. So as I was preparing this speech, I remember I grew up in the 80s. My middle school and my high school years were in the 1980s. And during that time, there was a very famous basketball player. You might have heard of him. He went by the name of Michael Jordan. Does that ring a bell? Anybody know that? Show of hands. Anybody at home, do you know that name? And during that time, he actually starred in a commercial, a TV commercial, and it was for the sports thirst quenching drink called Gatorade. And this was actually a very popular commercial at the time. And there was a song that accompanied this commercial. And the name of this song was "Be Like Mike." And I thought, oh, that's kind of a neat thing, to be like Mike. And I wanted to share some of that song with you. I'm actually going to sing it for you. Are you ready for this? No, I'm just kidding. I'll spare you the singing, but I did want to read this part of the song from you. Sometimes I dream that he is me. You've got to see, that's how I dream to be. I dream I move, I dream I groove, like Mike, if I could be like Mike. I want to be like Mike, if I could be like Mike. For just one day, if I could be that way. I dream I move, I dream I groove, like Mike, if I could be like Mike. Now I thought, that's pretty cool, if I could be like Mike. But I thought, well, what does that have to do with science of mind? And then I thought, well, what if, being this is Mother's Day weekend, instead of like Mike, I could be like Mom? And what are some of the things that Mom has taught us over the years, has taught me over the years, and has taught our society and our communities over the year about all things life? And what if, instead of the skills that we need on a basketball court, for example, on a basketball court, you need the skill to dribble, you need the skill to shoot, you need the skill to pass and to block and all of those things. But what if, instead of playing on the court of basketball, we were playing on the court of life? And instead of like Mike, we could be like Mom. And instead of shooting or dribbling or passing or any of those skills, what if we took in some other skills that we happen to learn from Mom and also happen to mesh very nicely with the science of mind? I want to talk about those skills today. and how we can use some of those skills to what I call be like mom. And not only be like mom, but to use those skills to then what I call heal the world. How cool would that be? Be like mom and heal the world. Now, in basketball, of course, you have to have the most basic skill, which is, and I'm not even going to attempt to demonstrate it, but you have a ball and you're dribbling. One of the most basic skills of basketball. But what is one of the most basic values of mom that is one of the very first things that we learn in Science of Mind? And that value, that skill is what I call, and what is at the heart of our teachings, our philosophy, is love. We're taught that God is all there is, that God is everything, everywhere, and that God is love. And therefore, if God is love, that must mean that love is everything and love is everywhere. And love, first and foremost, is what our society and what our teachings are pushing us and leaning us towards. And that was the value that I learned from my mom at an early age. And let me share you an example of how this plays out in the real world. If you can imagine for just a moment, I am I'll use the word bright, intelligent, capable 19-year-old home from his freshman year of college. A couple of my buddies and I got the bright idea that, hey, we're going to go on a camping trip. Sounds like anything that, typical college students on summer vacation that are at home would do. We go to the back of my parents' house, and we're in the back room, and we're just looking for some miscellaneous camping supplies. We don't have a whole lot of experience camping. We find a sleeping bag, and this is very spur of the moment trip. And we happen to see a cabinet right there. And I don't have a lot of knowledge actually about this room. My dad didn't let me go in this room a whole lot. My parents, I should also mention this part, are not home right now. So there's a cabinet right there, and I open it and I'm like, oh, I found the stash. Now, if you don't know what I mean by the stash, I mean alcohol. And of course, I'm only 19. My two other buddies, one is 18, one is 19, and then the oldest one is 20. Now, I don't know about Oklahoma this was in 1991, but back then in Colorado, the legal drinking age was 21, and none of us were of the legal drinking age. But being the bright young college students that all of us are, we decided to take it. And not just take some of it, but take the lot of it. And being even brighter than that, we thought, oh, they're never going to notice. Oh, boy. We got the alcohol, a couple of bottles of scotch, one bottle of whiskey, and about 3 six-packs. And in my defense, I'll just throw this out real quick. It was actually cheap beer. I'll throw that out real quick. But anyway, we grabbed the alcohol, we threw that in the car, and we threw the rest of our camping gear in the car. And my parents did know we were going camping, and they had a general idea up where I grew up, there's an area called the Mesa Campground, about 2 hours from home. We went there, we camped, we had a great time. We stayed at the campground for the entire 3 days, and I will admit, we did drink all the alcohol, quite a bit. We were smart enough, though, at least for this point, that once we were at the campground, we never left, and we never got in the vehicle or anything like that. And once we did leave the campground, we were sure to clean up and make sure we were nice and sober and everything like that. We get in the car, we drive home. I get home, mom and dad are there. I'm thinking in the back of my mind, all right, what's going to happen here? Well, lo and behold, nothing. Cool, I got away with this. My mom and dad did not say a single word. I thought, all right, well, that's pretty cool. If that's not love, I don't know what is. Now, a year later, I get home at the end of my sophomore year in college. It's the summer of my sophomore year. I happen to be sitting there at the breakfast bar. And one day my mom, just out of the blue, very casually asked me, did you boys enjoy the alcohol? My cereal comes about halfway out of my mouth. I'm like, you noticed that? And she said, well, of course we did. You thought we wouldn't? And I said, well, I didn't know because you never said anything. And she said, well, it took your dad about 3 days, which is the whole length of the camping trip, to come off his high horse, as my mom said, because he was about ready to throw us through the wall. But luckily, mom stepped in. And this is what science of mind teaches us, that God is all there is and love is all there is. That's where my mom in that moment, instead of choosing fear, instead of choosing anger, she chose love. And this is what she said. She said, Brad, I didn't worry about it because I knew you're smart and I knew you would be okay. And she was right, she was. And in that moment, my mom chose love. And I've never forgotten that story. Now, in my defense too, she actually didn't even make me pay for all the alcohol. But one of the values that I've learned from my mom and that science of mind teaches us, again, is that love is all there is. And I was asking myself the other day, if I could do one thing with my life, one thing right here, right now, what would that one thing be? If you could do just one thing with your life right here, right now, for all of those listening at home, what would that one thing be? And the answer came to myself to have this deep, deep awareness that love is all there is. And as we go forth in our journeys in this physical world, before we transition into whatever is next, whatever our beliefs are, that main point, I think love is all there is that we each have a personal responsibility to meditate and to move towards that, because that more than anything will then lead to what I call heal the world. And if my mom was a pretty tenacious person, she could get pretty fired up sometimes. But in that one moment when her still teenage boy messed up, sort of kind of pretty bad, again, in my defense, there were 3 of us, but that's still no excuse. But if in that moment she could choose to love, imagine when your neighbor messes up, when your community member down the street who you may not even know messes up. Imagine for that moment if we could choose love. And that's the first value, I believe, that science of mind is all about, that my mom taught me, is that love is all there is. So what is another value that my mom taught me, and that is at the heart of science of mind, our philosophies and our teachings? And I like to say that this next value is simply the art of forgiveness. Now, before I go any further, I've been blessed enough to be in many communities around the world and to have mentored and worked with many youth and to have come across many, many, many people from all walks of life. And I know in some of these ongoings that not everyone has been blessed enough or fortunate to have a mom in their life. And for those that did, sometimes that mom was an absentee mom, or perhaps even, and I don't want to use the word worse, but in some instances that mom presented a lot of challenges for the student in terms of drugs and alcohol, showing up to pick up their child halfway inebriated and things of that nature. The act of forgiveness. So I want to take a moment to speak to all of those people in the world who may later see this on YouTube, to anyone here who might have experienced this or know someone who has experienced this. The art of forgiveness is very powerful. And for those that experienced a lesser than joyful situations with their mom like I did, I would say, be the mom that you wish you had. And be the mom to someone else who needs a mom. Not everyone, again, in this world is blessed to have a mom that was not only incredible, amazing, like my mom was, but to simply have a mom altogether. So I would say to that, forgive your mom, because if you are here on this planet, you do have a mom. But forgive your mom, but more than that, be the mom you wish you had. Be the mom you wish you had to a friend, to a neighbor, to a coworker, to someone that you don't even know. And be the mom to someone who needs a mom. There's been many opportunities in my life where I was fortunate enough to be able to step in and be that role model, to be the dad. I was fortunate enough to have a very good dad, but to be that dad to many students who needed it. And I've come across many situations in my life, adults who I realized did not have a father figure growing up. And having that mom or dad father figure is incredibly important for the development of any adult in any culture, in any country. So if you get that opportunity, forgive, love, forgive, and be that mom that you wish you had, and be that mom to someone who needs that mom. So my second value that I would share towards this goal of healing the world, first is love, second is practice the art of forgiveness. Now, the third value that I would share with you all today, that again, my mom demonstrated for me, not in her words, but in her actions, was this idea of teaching, guiding, and leading. Ernest Holmes has one desire for all of us. We can stand up here all day long and talk all we want about science of mind, the principles and the philosophies. And Ernest Holmes says, that's great. Yes, do that. Absolutely do that. But if there's one thing that I wish all of the science of mind students and practitioners would do, it is this: be the example, lead by example. And that is what my mom did. Now I have to share another example from my life of what my mom did for me and how she taught me, how she led me. And thanks to her tenacity and her perseverance, I was able to not only speak here today, but to write this speech. It started in first grade. Well, I'm going way back here. First grade, I could not read. I was struggling with the condition that we now know today in medical science to be dyslexia, where you kind of see things backwards and you don't know what's going on and all of that. Nobody at the time knew really about this. This was back in, so this would have been 1978. Oh boy, now I just told you my age. You can do the math there. 1978, 1979, around there. So dyslexic was not really heard of a whole lot, not very common, not well known. But I was really struggling with reading. And I remember in first grade, we would sit in a reading circle and the teacher would come around to me and she says, Brad, it's your turn. And we were on very simple, C-spot, run and all of that. And I couldn't do it. I froze in panic. And I remember one time it was my turn and the teacher looked at me and I looked at her and I kind of just looked down and ashamed. And you know how students get, they're very quiet. And I couldn't say the word the. I couldn't even say anything at all. And my teacher looked at me and she goes, the, and I looked back at her, I could still hear her and I repeated the. And then my teacher, she moved on to the next student. And I thought, okay, I'm out of it. My mom refused to accept this. And this is what Ernest Holmes means by be the example, lead by example. My mom, at the time, I hated it, but now I thank her and I bless her heart. She got a stack of books about this thick, I don't know if you can all see that at home, called Reading to Learn type books. There was about 10 or 15 books. Each book was roughly 20 pages. Every single day that summer at the end of first grade, my mom drilled me in reading. She took, I remember this, a 3x5 index card. And she cut out just a little tiny rectangle square in it so that I would do one word at a time. So it started with one word, the. And she forced me to read it and she forced me to practice. The book. And I would go back and forth, the book. The book is heavy, until finally I could say the book is heavy. And she drilled me and she drilled me and she drilled me until finally I didn't need that card and I could say the book is heavy. And now here's where that paid off. At the end of my second grade year, I was not only caught up to where my level of reading should have been by second grade, but I actually accelerated at the end of that summer, or excuse me, the end of second grade. And in third grade, I was actually put in the accelerated fourth grade reading program. So be the example. One person at a time. Somewhere, someone in your life needs you to lead by example. Again, it could be a sibling, it could be a son or a daughter, it could be anyone. But that is the value that Ernest Holmes wants for us more than anything. Not to talk our talk, but to walk our talk. Be the example. Love, practice forgiveness, and be the example. The next example that I wanted to share with you that, again, my mom displayed, and that is very common to science of mind. And before I say what that is, let me get into another example again from my life. 9 years ago, like a lot of people around the planet, I went through a divorce. And if you've experienced such a situation, you know these are not easy. These are trying situations. It's like a roller coaster. They can be up and down. But my mom, being the mom that she is, my mom was there for me. She was a shoulder to cry on, a shoulder, more importantly than anything, to listen to. And that is the next value that mom has taught me, that Science of Mind teaches us, is not just to share what we know, but to listen. First listen and then teach. And that's one of the mistakes that I've made, is I've always tried to teach first, but I haven't always listened first. And my mom, during that tenacious period of my life that lasted almost a year, my mom was there for me. She was there as a blanket of comfort. So again, as I said, be that example, lead by example, be that blanket of comfort. And that's what Science of Mind teaches, not so much to teach others that God is all there is, but to listen to what God is telling us. What is God telling you right here, right now? As I was preparing the speech also, I was asking that exact same question. I was saying, God, you're taking me down this Science of Mind journey. This is a crazy, fascinating, exciting road. But what is it that you really want me to know? What is it that you want me to learn from this? Where is it that you want to take me? And so, of course, I did what we're supposed to do as students. I got into my meditation and, got all comfortable and put some soft meditative music on. And I live in a small camper trailer, so I didn't light a candle, but I can dim the light, make it a little romantic. I thought, all right, setting the scene. I'm going to get it. I'm going to have an answer to this question. God, where are you taking me on this crazy Science of Mind journey? Because this is what my mom did, and this is what I want to share with you also. Well, I sat there and I meditated for about 15, 20 minutes, and guess what? Nothing. Nothing came to me. That's how God works. But 15 minutes later, I'm washing the dishes. This was just a couple of days ago, actually. I'm washing the dishes and it came to me. And this is what my mom did to me, and this is what I want to share with you. This is what God imparted on me in the form of an epiphany at that moment as I was washing the dishes. You never know when God will inspire you, when God will talk to you. And God said this very simply, heal the world. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. So I can't tell you where your Science of Mind journey is taking you, but I would just humbly offer this one thought for you. First, ask that question, God, where are you taking me? Because remember, God is all there is. God is always with you. And remember, God is love. And so love is always with you. Love is a part of who you are. Where is love taking you? And so God has this crazy adventure in store for me called Heal the World. I don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but I'm excited to find out. So in your journey and your quest forward, not what are you saying about God, not what are you telling to God, but are you listening? And that's what my mom did for me during my divorce. She was there and she simply listened with an open heart and an open mind. And so that is what you need. If you want to get in harmony with life, if you truly want to live that life of peace, of joy, which is what Ernest Holmes wants for us, that's the heart of Science of Mind philosophy, to tap into our inner wisdom, our inner guidance, our inner GPS, God-powered system, not to talk, but to listen. And so again, what is God telling you? And for me, it just happened to come when I was washing my dishes the other day. And you just know when it strikes you because you're like, oh, that's what it is. You have that sort of aha feeling, that aha moment. Now, I could go on all day. You know I like to talk. I could go on all day about the values of Science of Mind and what my mom shared with me and could share with you more. But in the sake of time, because, I want to keep you till about 20, 30 minutes. I could keep you 3 hours, but, I'm not. That'll be another time, right? I wanted to share 3 more things with you that I believe moms around the world emulate, that you can emulate, that are at the heart of the philosophy of Science of Mind. And those 3 things are trust, believe, know that it will all be okay, and have faith. Here's what Ernest Holmes says about trust. You are the architect of your own future. No one else can create your own life for you. So begin with trust, trust in yourself, trust in God, and trust in life. Now here's what Ernest Holmes' Science of Mind and Jesus has to say about belief. Jesus says, of course, we've all heard, as you believe, so it shall be. What do you believe? Do you believe that you can be a difference maker in this world? Do you believe that you can be a game changer on this planet? Do you believe that you can embrace these values and help heal the world? Just like my mom helped to heal me one person at a time, can you be that person to help heal the world one person at a time? But Science of Mind says about belief that as much will be given unto you as you believe that will be. What is it, again, that you believe, and how much do you believe will be given to you? Just as my mom believed in me, go forth and believe in someone, and especially believe in someone that you've never met. The last value that I want to share with you is this idea about faith. And I wanted to share with you from the readings of Science of Mind what is written about faith. From the Science of Mind textbook, it is written this about faith. The altar of faith. This is also in part from the Bible, Matthew chapter 5, verse 23. Again, Jesus tells us that our gifts brought to the altar of life are unacceptable while there is aught between us and our fellow man. Here's a hard saying. We cannot always please our fellow men. Boy, don't I know that to be the truth. Human experience has taught us that this is impossible. What attitude, then, are we to assume? This. Whether we please or whether we displease, we need have no personal animosity towards others. The altar of faith is approached through peace and goodwill toward all. The divine ear is attuned to harmony and cannot be approached through discord. When we agree with our adversaries, quickly they will disappear. For there can be no reality to us unless we recognize it. But if we recognize that which is false, by our acceptance of it, we shall be delivered to the judgment whereby we ourselves have judged. The utmost farthing must be paid until we no longer indulge in evil doing. Jesus tells us to resist not evil, but to love our enemies, and to do good to them who would do us evil. For this is to manifest the spirit of love, which is God. And that's what Ernest Holmes wants for all of us, to manifest that spirit of God that is love, that spirit that is in each and every one of us. God loves all alike and causes his rain to fall and her sun to shine alike upon all. In arms which we are all inclusive, divine love encompasses everything. And that's another interpretation of faith from Science of Mind. Have faith, love thy enemy, love thy neighbor. I'm pretty sure when that was written in the Bible that they actually meant that when they said it. So again, as we go forth on our journeys, let's not just let's not just talk our talk, but let's begin to walk our walk. Let's begin to walk our talk. And as I begin to wrap up this speech, my sermon here today, there's one more value that I want to share with all of you. And again, this has been a very personal speech for me today. And it's one more thing that is at the heart of the philosophy of Science of Mind. And it's another very important lesson that my mom taught to me. And that lesson is this, and that value is this, that I want to share with all of you if we are to be healers on this planet and to begin healing the world one person at a time. And that is this: never stop loving. Never stop loving. At the opening of my sermon, I talked about the core philosophy of Science of Mind is love, and that no matter what, my mom stood by me and loved me, even when I was naive and took all that alcohol. There was another period in my life of almost 8 years where I had virtually no communication with my mom. I was in that tug of war stage with my mom where she was pushing me away to be independent, And I didn't quite know how to do that, to be self-sufficient on my own. And I was still kind of clinging to home. This is that 18 to 24, 25, 26-year-old stage that a lot of young men especially go through. There was a period of about 8 years where I had very little communication with my mom, and my mom always took the lead when it came to dealing with her children. My dad always kind of sort of played a supporting role in that. But after 8 years, almost 8 years, I needed help. And I picked up the phone and I called home. And after 8 years, guess who answered the phone on the very first ring and said, "How are you?" No animosity, none of that. Just, "How are you, dear? How are you doing?" It was my mom. That's the power of never stop loving. So again, as you go forward in your life, I ask, be the example, listen, forgive, practice forgiveness, and never stop loving. So at the beginning, I also talked about that song, Be Like Mike. But I think instead, if I could choose one thing, I would choose not to be like Mike, but rather I would choose to be like Mom. And if I could rewrite that song, maybe it would go something like this. Sometimes I dream that she is me. You see, that is who I dream to be, like Mom, if I could be like Mom. I dream I love unconditionally. I dream I forgive, like Mom, if I could be like Mom. For just one day, if I could be that way. I dream I believe, I dream I lead, I dream I heal, I dream I instill, I dream I teach, I dream I am a blanket of comfort, I dream I am a beacon of light, a beacon of trust, a beacon of hope, a beacon of belief and faith. Like Mom, if I could be like Mom. Again, I want to say a personal thank you to my mom and honor her and dedicate this speech to her. And a personal thank you to all the moms around the world everywhere. Thank you for your service. Thank you for putting up with us sons who were not always the best at times. And thank you for loving us no matter what, even if we didn't call home for a very, very long time. And for everyone everywhere watching at home, listening at home, here in church today, or anyone maybe later watching this on YouTube, I would say this: to heal the world, be like Mom. And so it is.